Hello, this is Caleb here. I'm here to do a quick video to warn you about the pitfalls of very cheap miniatures. Now, I had gotten some of these skeleton miniatures. These are very similar, if not, I'm not sure if they're done by the exact same company, but they're similar to the TimMee cavemen miniatures. And they're interesting little miniatures, and the main point that I saw was that they're super cheap. They're obviously based on like past miniatures. I believe one of the cavemen actually used to be a Hulk miniature before they repurposed him. So my main point is that they're cheap, but then I thought, hey, they're so cheap, they'd be an excellent start to try painting, because who wants to spend money on miniatures if you're just going to be experimenting on your painting? So I did try to paint a bunch of them, and it turned out okay. But then it also turned out that no matter what I did, the paint started flaking off of them. And you can see, some of these are a little bit worse than others or whatnot. But, basically, I mean, this is what happens. You get paint just completely flakes off them. So there was literally, even though I was saving money by buying these cheap ones, I really shouldn't have done it. In fact, I probably should have actually just gone with something like Reaper instead. Now, Reaper miniatures are a little bit more expensive, obviously. A lot of people don't like the PVC material. I actually think they're great for miniatures. The medium miniatures especially. Now, the smaller ones, I do understand people have been having issues with paint flakage and whatnot. But I think that all you really have to do is just be very careful what materials you use. If you go on the Reaper website forum, they have a whole, and I'll link it below, but they basically have a whole forum post about how you're supposed to paint them to avoid this thing. What I have been doing personally is recently I have been doing the liner. So I've been basically base coating my Reaper miniatures with red liner, which is good. And I think that's going to stop a lot of the flaking issues that I've had in the past. But I've basically just painted Reaper miniatures with these goblins here that I did, which have received heavy use. These dudes I basically painted with just regular Reaper paints, and then I did varnish them a little bit with a bit of diluted acrylic varnish. And people have said, well, you can't really seal them with anything because then it will crack and whatnot. I didn't have that problem. I used Vallejo, however you pronounce that. I used deleted matte varnish, and that seemed to protect them pretty well. And these have had a heavy use. In my goblins, the paint job has not cracked or done anything. And with the medium ones, I actually haven't really sealed much of any of the medium miniatures that I've gotten. I basically just given them a basic paint job with Reaper paints, and they don't seem to really need sealing. But those are the medium ones, so obviously they're not going to get the heavy banging around that the little miniatures are going to get. So I would consider that as one of my first ideas. There's also, if you're really looking for cheap miniatures and you really don't want to mess around with Reaper, you might want to just consider grabbing some Mage Knight miniatures. Again, these guys seem to take paint pretty well. And again, if you are lucky on an eBay sale, you can get them for much cheaper than the Reaper miniatures. There is, of course, the Dungeons and Dragons board games that have the hard plastic versions of the official D&D miniatures in them. Now, those are unpainted, but you will have to prime them. I found that the regular Krylon primer works very well for those. There's very little flaking. But you have to prime those, and you have to seal those with some sort of spray Krylon. I use Krylon Ultraviolet. If you go to my other video, you can see some of the examples of those. But those are great too if you're looking for cheap ones. In ultra cheap ones, sometimes you'll get lucky. For example, I was actually messing around with some of the the DFC fantasy miniatures, and I actually found a bunch of the little demon guys here, which are the old school toys, and they actually took paint pretty well. I didn't prime them at all. I basically just gave them a quick paint with just Reaper miniatures paint, and they seem to work pretty well, and they have not cracked or gotten, they have not lost paint at all, and they have not chipped. But yeah, this is just a very basic paint job. And like I said, sometimes those are considered collectible, so you actually won't get a very good deal on those. But yeah, no, I would definitely avoid the TimMee toys if you're looking to practice painting. Because honestly, it really sucks if you're practice painting and all of a sudden, like, some of your first miniatures are going to turn out okay. And then it would really suck if you kind of like put in all this work in a miniature and then the paint just flaked all off. So again, if I happen to find any sort of primer or paint that will actually stick to these things, I'll make another video and let you know. But as of now, I've tried many different paints. And these super cheap cavemen, TimMee toys, anything like that on Amazon that's uber cheap, paint's not going to stick to them. Don't even bother trying to get in practice with those sort of miniatures. Go with Reaper. Go with WizKids Mage Knight stuff. Go with, there's a ton of different resin sets like Warlords miniatures. Go on Miniature Market and see what they have for alchemy miniatures and stuff. All those resin miniatures take paint very well. And even though they're very detailed and are not really beginner level miniatures, I would rather suggest to you the starter out, the beginner painter, to start with miniatures that are actually going to keep paint. And that way, all your hard work, you'll actually have a painted miniature at the end of it that you'll be able to use for gaming. So that's just my quick suggestion. As always, have a nice day. If you have anything else that you want me to talk about, please let me know. I am always interested in your questions and topics that I could talk about. I've got a bunch coming up, but again, if there's anything that you want to tell me, just let me know in the comments below.